Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Deal. Sitting here Sunday morning, got the rewatch in for this Oregon Ducks team, and let me just start with this, Dill. As a Michigan fan, I long for the days where I get to be upset about winning a conference game by 21 points. And that's kind of where Oregon is at, and rightfully so, heading into this game, right? This is an Oregon team that has looked like the best team in college football, is the best team in college football, didn't necessarily play like the best team in college football. Dill, this is really the first bad game we've seen from Oregon in like 6 weeks, and they still win by 21 points. There are some things that you want to clean up. I want to talk about the Oregon offense without Tez Johnson. At the end of the day, to me, this felt like Dan Lanning, this coaching staff saying, let's go just win this football game, stay healthy, on to the next one against Wisconsin next weekend. So I don't think there's a ton of panic for a lot of Oregon fans. I do think it's worth having the conversation about what do we think this offense will look like without Tez Johnson over the next couple of weeks, because I think it's fair to say this Oregon offense definitely missed him. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Oregon fans, one, I think most importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. I follow a lot of y'all on Twitter. I'm probably being a little bit more optimistic than some of y'all are. Now, Sunday morning, maybe we're kind of on the mend, getting the positive vibes back. But I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Again, the support from the Oregon fans has been amazing. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'll kick it to you. And I want to start because there are things that I think were sloppy that need to get cleaned up. But I also think there were some good things to talk about too. But I want to focus on this Oregon offense. Without Tez Johnson, to me, it felt like they missed him an awful lot against Maryland.
Yeah, and especially in certain situations, felt like on third down, on that
Yeah.
fourth down where they missed to Justice Low, like you just don't think you missed those throws. They haven't missed those plays to Tez Johnson pretty much since you kind of said it those first couple weeks. So you just didn't see as clean of a passing attack. But again, I think you look. I'm a little surprised they went away from Evan Stewart, frankly, in the second half. It felt like he got left out of that game. I mean, he was doing some of those things Tez Johnson was doing, like catching the ball, making plays after the catch. And it felt like they got away from him a little bit. So, again, the second half, I didn't think they played clean on offense. I actually thought the first half looked really good. And this has been something Oregon struggled with, it felt like all year, is those second halves. But again, I think that they have the pieces to do it, but you certainly see them not play with the same rhythm
I'm
because
I'm kind of, yeah, rhythm. Rhythm is probably the word that I would use in it. It was kind of a weird game from a rhythm standpoint because Oregon had some defensive scores, some short fields. Like you see Oregon's total yards at 363. I would venture to make a guess that that might be the lowest since the Idaho game week 1. Like Oregon defensive touchdowns, short fields that the Oregon defense was giving you, like they didn't have a ton of opportunity to really find a ton of rhythm on offense. That's probably how I would describe it. I think that's a good way of saying it. Without Tez Johnson, the rhythm was a little bit clunky. I'm kind of with you because we both watched that first quarter and said that's kind of how we thought it'd go. Like Tez Johnson out for a couple of weeks, Evan Stewart, the new wide receiver one. After that, like first couple of drives, like you didn't hear a ton from Evan Stewart till later in the football game. Terrence Ferguson actually led the pack by far in terms of targets, 12 targets. Now I think the part that you're frustrated with is only 6 catches for 35 yards. I mean, 35 yards and 12 targets is not exactly the efficient numbers and explosive numbers that Tez Johnson was able to give you. That Justice Low fourth down where you get man coverage, you run a little mesh concept. That's barbecue chicken when Tez Johnson's on the football field. And Justice Low was able to create some separation, but he kind of got caught up in that mesh a little bit. Tez Johnson wouldn't. Dylan Gabriel didn't miss that throw. That's a timing route that Justice Low couldn't get out of the break fast enough. That's why he missed it. You see that routinely made when Tez Johnson is on the field. So some of those move the chains kind of plays where you know the football is going to Tez Johnson, that's kind of where you missed it. Dill, I'll say this. I still want to see more Kenny Sadiq. 2 targets, 2 catches for 3 yards in this football game. Again, Dan Lanning, Will Stein, they're a hell of a lot smarter than me. I say this all the time. There's a reason I'm sitting in my basement talking into my microphone here, not getting paid the big bucks to run this Oregon program. I look at Kenny Sadiq and say every time he touches the football, good things seem to happen. just didn't get involved as much as I thought he would in the absence of Tez Johnson. How you feeling about Kenny Sadiq, the utilization of him in the offense here?
And they struggled completing passes through the middle of the field pretty much not all night, but like they
Yeah,
obviously had some drops. They had some issues there. And again, that's Tez Johnson land. You look at what Kenny Sadiq can be in terms of a matchup. I mean, so hard to deal with. We kind of talked about how when Tez Johnson gets his matchups in one-on-one man coverage, he's really consistently winning them in a way that makes throws easy for the quarterback. I think Kenyon Sadiq should be able to do the same thing. You see the size, you see the athleticism. I mean, he is a really special talent. I am kind of with you. It just like it feels like they need to get him involved in this offense, and that's frankly whether Taj Johnson's on the field or not, because he really does provide something that I don't think anyone else on this Oregon team can do.
Trayshawn Holden only 2 targets too. Thought he would get a little bit more involved. I guess it's they Dylan Gabriel might just be kind of that guy where he just wants to pepper a certain pass catcher. Because going back to Oklahoma, like that was Drake Stoops. Like it was just we're gonna pepper Drake Stoops every time he's on the football field. Now it's Tez Johnson. Without Tez Johnson, kind of became Terrence Ferguson. Dill, it wasn't the cleanest operation from this Oregon offense. I, I guess the two other things that I would note is it wasn't a very aggressive Oregon offense either. I mean, Dylan Gabriel's average depth of target was 5.3 yards down the field. 2 passes all night went for 20 plus yards and through the air. Like they just weren't really trying to be all that explosive, which again, Oregon's predicated on ball out quick to your playmakers in space, and that's kind of normally where Tez Johnson excels. Again, without Tez Johnson, I don't want to see this Oregon offense go into like this conservative shell because I still
Well,
think
'cause
this.
honestly, like that ability to push the ball down the field and work the intermediate portion, like you saw against Ohio State, that's what made them or like really felt like this team was getting dangerous on offense. Like again,
Yeah,
even in the first, like that ability to hit Trayshawn Holden on that 20 to 30 kind of yard window, like those are big plays. And they were hitting them consistently really ever since that Ohio State game. So I'm kind of with you. Probably want to see them get back to just being a little bit more aggressive or not aggressive, just playing the way they were playing, where they were trying to get the ball to every portion of the field. It did feel like a lot of stuff was underneath, using more screens. And
yeah.
again, they obviously probably going to need to find their stride without what Tez Johnson's going to be, but like that is a part of their offense that I
Yeah.
really don't think they should go away from.
You're trying to replace one of the best wide receivers in all of college football. Like it's not easy, and arguably you just can't do it. Like Tez Johnson's one of one. He's a special talent. No Marcus Harper. Dill didn't really notice it. I mean, Oregon didn't give up a sack, and that was nice to see because you go back to early in the year, like when you didn't have, when you were dealing with some injuries and you're trying to find your rotation, Oregon struggled in a big way. It was nice to see them kind of just rolling Rogers or Luley, and you didn't really notice that you were missing a starter on the inside of the offensive line. Again, you scored 39 points. Like, as a Michigan fan, I don't we haven't scored 39 points all year. Like we're talking about Oregon having a poor performance on offense, and yeah, I know they had some defensive touchdowns. It's still you. I think if you're Oregon, you're feeling pretty good about the offense. You're just still looking at how you can replace Tez. Dill, before we get into the defense, which I thought was pretty dang good, besides the penalties, and we'll get to that. How about Dan Lanning getting the big boys involved? I knew you were a fan of it. I knew you were a fan of it. And Jordan Birch on that fake punt, I thought that was Trayshawn Holden for a second. That kid, and I shouldn't call him a kid, he's a 6-year senior. Jordan Birch, 5th year, whatever he is. Jordan Birch is a freak athlete for 295 pounds. When he was running down the field, he was absolutely cooking. Then you get the big guys involved. Josh Connolly with the 2-point conversion. Like it's I bet the recruits love it. Like you ask me why people want to go play for Dan Lanning, this Oregon program. It's because of that. Like it's nice to see Oregon do some of that. Dill, getting to the defense, I'll kick it to you. Who do you want to shout out first in terms of this Oregon defense?
I mean, it's Mateo Yu. Like he is turning into a legitimately
Unblockable.
dominant defensive end, and we
Yeah.
kind of talk like they needed one of those guys, Tuioti, Mateo Yu, one purchase like one of those younger pass rushers to really emerge and be dominant. I mean, the way he's playing now, I mean, every rep he's creating something, whether he's pushing the pocket, collapsing the pocket, whether he's winning, that ability to win one-on-one and win quickly and get sacks, I think has been probably the biggest thing for him in terms of his development. But his dominant play, I mean, you're looking, this defensive line's playing the way like Georgia plays, or some of those defensive lines that Dan Lanning's coached, where they can just take a game over and put it on themselves.
They got their hands on must have been 6-7 balls, like at the line of scrimmage. They just that's something that, again, you kind of don't think about it. It's not a stat that you look for on the defensive line, but that's gonna win you some football games later in the season if you can consistently do that. Del Mateo U has emerged to be just like an unblockable force, and he's not necessarily a guy that's a sack artist. Like I don't know if he'll finish with 15 sacks on the year, but he's so disruptive. I mean, the power this kid has in his hands, just putting tackles right in the lap of quarterbacks, how good he is against the run. He's one of those guys that it might not reflect in the box score how dominant he is, but when you watch the football games, like this kid is just a game wrecker for Oregon up front. Dude, my shout out Jordan Birch. I got two shout outs. One, Jordan Birch, back. Like he's back. He maybe was getting his feet wet a little bit against Michigan, back against Maryland. That play where he had that strip sack that Brandon Johnson returned for the touchdown, just forklifting that left tackle. You see why he was a 5-star coming out of high school, and he's really starting to turn it on. And as he continues to get healthy, I know he was dealing with an ankle injury, came out of the game. I'll throw this out because Derek Carmen was rather quiet. Like the first game all year where Derek Carmen was a little bit more quiet. When you see Oregon get into the college football playoffs, Big Ten championship, I want to see a little bit of this pass rush unit where you have Mateo and Tatum on the outside. You kick Jordan Birch, who I remind people is 295 pounds, to the 3-tech, and then Derek Harmon. That pass rush unit, like Oregon's getting really good stop in the run. They're really good stop in the run against Maryland. If you're forcing some 3rd and longs, I would love to see that unit getting after the passer later on in the season. And then my second favorite player on this team right now, Tashim Johnson. He just does it all for Oregon. And I had my question marks about him moving back to safety because I thought you were really taking him out of his niche at that nickel spot. He does it all. Like you want him to play single high safety, he can do that. You want him to come in and play essentially that nickel corner and hold up in man coverage, he can do that. He's phenomenal in terms of supporting the run, getting dirty, getting his hands dirty. His versatility continues to be a massive story in terms of how good Oregon's playing on defense.
You know who else I thought played good was Kobe Savage. And I don't know that he's had an incredible year, frankly, up till this point, but you saw him flying around. It felt like he was playing a little bit faster, making more impact plays. So, and you look, I thought the secondary was really good tonight. Again, obviously, the only thing that I felt like Maryland could get to that worked, I mean, it was penalties. Like,
that's how they move the football.
So it's like you look, that secondary is really good. Nico Reed's still playing really good at that boundary. And Dante Manning kind of working together. Really good combo. That secondary is really starting to come together. I thought for parts of the season early, you felt like it was like a good unit. They weren't giving up a ton of big plays, but they were giving up some yards. I mean, they're starting to sit on teams a little bit more, just challenge wide receivers more, play like a more aggressive style that I think is more fun to watch, frankly.
I saw, so Oregon fans, I'm just going to put this out there. I did not fact check it myself. This is a dangerous game because you see a lot on Twitter. You can't trust it all. Believe Billy Edwards was only the second quarterback to throw for over 200 yards against Oregon all year. I'm not positive that's true. Will Howard was the only other one. Billy at 206 yards, so he just got over the 200-yard mark. This secondary has been awesome. I thought this was one of the more not as shaky performances, I'd say, from the secondary. I didn't think it was elite. These Maryland wide receivers, and Billy Edwards made some big-time throws. Like Ty Felton's an NFL dude. Ty Felton is a very, very good wide receiver. Jabbar Muhammad maybe had some plays that he'd like to have back. Jabbar Muhammad is the last guy I'm worried about out there in the boundary cornerbacks. But like we know what he is, and my overall take, and I think this is a good way to close it, is this is college football. Like you're not going to play good football with 18 to 22-year-old kids every single week. And if this is bad football for Oregon, winning by 21 points in conference play, I'm taking that every single day of the week if I'm an Oregon fan. Again, not the cleanest. It's not a game that you're coming out of and saying, like, we're winning, like, we're back, we're here. But it's like you're not worried about where this Oregon team is going. We'll cut it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.